And now, the SleepHawk Worldwide Podcast. Here are your hosts, Brandon Staton and Tyler Hansbrough.
All right, everybody, we got a very special podcast. Welcome to SleepHawk Worldwide. Sorry, my guy, Sleep is in Italy. So check out our social media, Instagram page. He'll keep you updated on that. But we got a great podcast. Pablo stepping in for Sleep Dog. We have a great Tar Heel that's going to join us today. Anoop Desai. He is a big-time Tar Heel. He graduated in 2008. He is a member of the Cliffhangers, and he also won the best a cappella in 2007. I think She Has No Time. And he is now a singer, songwriter, actor, been on many shows, Billions, Russian Doll, Little Voice, just to name a few. And a lot of you guys know him from American Idol. Anoop Desai, thanks for coming on SleepHawk Worldwide.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's our connection to Anoop goes through Pablo, our producer. So he hooked us up, got us to connect. So you're getting into acting now. How has that transition been? And how do you like it?
Man, I love it. I was in the music industry for about 10 years. So like you mentioned, I was on American Idol in 2009 after I graduated from Carolina. Shout out to Pobs, I'm sure, for pulling up that best of college acapella. Little.
I think that was all Tyler. I think the dude did his research.
Oh, yeah. Really? Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah, man, I dug deep.
You said that. I was like, shit. Yeah. All right. We're going last decade. Love it. No, I was in the music industry for so long because obviously I came off Idol and had a lot of opportunities because of that. And then later in my career in the music industry, I was doing a lot of writing. So I was, it was a great time. I was traveling around the world. I was, writing K-pop in South Korea. I was writing music in Sweden and all these different continents, LA and New York and Nashville, obviously. But, the thing that I missed more than anything, like, even though I was singing, I just missed that, like, camaraderie. I missed being part of a group and part of a cast. Really similar to being a part of a team, I'm sure. And so just like the fact that I was doing it kind of by myself all of this time, it really wore on me after a while. So I had the opportunity to join a stage production, and from there did some off-Broadway work, and now have been pretty heavy in film and TV for the past couple of years. And I found that camaraderie and that teamwork and that like friendship and belonging that I missed when I was just kind of working on my own.
So how would you say acting compares to songwriting and singing? Was it a natural transition? Because Anoop, I kind of dug a little deep. I'm not sure many people know, but did you start acting first? Because it looks like when I dug a little, did my intel, you did a show on WRL called the CentralExpress.com.
Yeah.
So were you an actor before a singer?
I was always a singer, like growing up, just doing choir and stuff like that. But I did start acting at like a pretty early age. It was never, I just got done working on a show that has a lot of young people on it, and those actors, I mean, they know what they're doing. They might be 12, 13 years old, but they're like in it. They're in it professionally, and like that's the path that they're on. I think I was just kind of like, I was in plays, and then I got an opportunity, I did that like local TV show. So I've kind of been doing both for a little while, but singing, especially when I got to college, singing was it. That was, I got to join the Clefs, and that was just such a big part of my college experience. It just kind of took over my life for, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do you have a passion for acting, or is it kind of newer, kind of just filling it out? Because I can tell with singing and songwriting, it feels like, you really had that passion. And Could you just tell me, like, what goes into writing a song? How does somebody sit down because I have no clue. Like, how do you write a song? What do you start with? And, all these songs that people hear, a lot of them don't even write their own songs. So were you ever a songwriter for somebody else too?
Yeah. I mean, actually, like that's what I was doing mostly, like probably in, 2016 to 2019 or 2016, 2018, whatever. Like I was mostly writing for other people. I had my own project under a pseudonym. So I didn't, after Idol, I released a couple of things under my name, but then after that, I started releasing stuff under the name Totem. And stuff was pretty successful. And that is the thing that got me into songwriting for other people. And I guess the process varies, right? Like if you are kind of an acoustic singer-songwriter, you might be sitting down with a guitar on the piano and really taking it slow and fleshing out ideas. The part of the industry that I was in was mostly pop music. So the way that works generally is you have a producer who is in charge of all like I guess the track, the background music, what the sonic palette is, chords and that kind of thing. And then you have a couple writers, also called top liners. And so we're really in charge of lyrics and melody. So the part that you can sing on your own, if you have your favorite song, like it's the song, like without the background. And the background is basically essentially the karaoke track is what the producer does, and the lyrics and melody are what the songwriter does in pop music. And yeah, my passion has always been like singing, performing. And I think because of that, like the commonality between what I used to do and what I do now is that performance aspect. So like, I can't say that I was ever, and I'm like really passionate about writing music. The thing that I'm passionate about is performing, so it can be, as long as I'm like on stage or on camera or, expressing myself in some art in some way, like that's really what brings me passion. So I think that it was an easy transition to go from singing to acting, because that's the thing it has in common is you got to show up, you got to do it, in front of people and everything that means. Even if it's like nerve wracking, you got butterflies in your stomach, all of that sort of stuff. Like that's what I live for, that's what a lot of, and I'm sure like athletes, it's like you live to be in the game and play the game. And that's the way that I like look at my career.
Yeah. For me, I will tell you one thing I do miss about basketball is like that preparation. So preparing, and then it's like game day, just that in between, whether you think like, hey, I put all this work in, but nothing guarantees that work's going to pay off. And, I'm trying to relate, like, to me, when you're singing, you could be in front of a huge audience, but when you're acting, it seems like it's just camera and you can do take after take. But if you miss something or you kind of mess up the sound on something, you just got to keep on going, and hopefully that doesn't get noticed. Kind of like in basketball, you make mistakes, you're going to make mistakes. But I do really miss that feeling. That's a good comparison.
That preparation is that preparation, like it feels great, right? Like I think like my favorite part of music, my favorite part of acting is the preparation, because then like when you get in front of the camera or you get on stage, then it's just muscle memory, right? It's like it's taking everything and all the time and effort that you put into preparation, and it's just being like, this is what it is, and it's never going to be perfect, right? I mean, singing never going to be perfect. You're never gonna have a take, or you're never gonna get on stage one night and it's like exactly what you wanted to do, because it's just, I would love to hope that we all get to that point at some time in our lives where we can just like, we're just machines, right? Like, and we don't mess up and we don't second guess ourselves. Like that it just never happens. Like, so you have to enjoy the preparation.
I think that goes for all fields too. I mean, we were talking yesterday about, just watching the golf tournament and seeing these guys do these unbelievable things. But if you're practicing and doing this day in and day night, you're going to be incredible when you step on that stage. And also, just back to that point of perfection, as a producer, I record a lot of people, and we do some multiple takes of things, but sometimes those imperfections are really what make the art great. You've had all that time to practice, and you get on the spotlight, but you give it that little bit of extra, and even if it's not dead on perfect, it's just those little slight things that I think make a difference in those performances. And Anoop, you're fantastic at that. Your sense of melody and stuff with the music, but also just your expression on TV. I've watched everything you've done now, and I think the thing that impresses me the most is how expressive you are on camera. And I think a lot of people, even if they have acting chops on stage and stuff, it's a very different art getting in front of a screen and being able to express all of that, even just in a look or in a quick turn or something.
Yeah, and that's what like a director is for, right? Like there's so many parallels between sports and acting and music. It's like you got to have a great coach, you got to have a great director, you got to have everyone around you and everyone around that like has to be on their game and there to like support ultimately what the team is trying to do, which is like make the best product possible. Whether it's to win the game or win an Emmy, right? at the end of the day. Yeah.
So, Anoop, do you get, let's just say so did you take acting classes?
When I figured out that I love being on TV, I love the preparation. I love being on stage. That's when I really took the pedagogy seriously. That's when I started all right, you have like a baseline of talent, right? All right, I'm in the thing. And that's already more than like a lot of people get to do. And so, then you got to start taking it seriously. You got to start going to class and reading books and studying, great works of art, so that you kind of so that you know what you're doing. Because otherwise it is just all right, let me try and do this. But when the stakes are that high, when someone's paying you to do something, you better show up. Otherwise it's not gonna, happen.
So if you worked with an actor or actress that you're man, they're very, very talented, that you think did you have a role model or somebody you looked after or you wanted to kind of emulate in acting? Have you worked with what actors you worked with? You're just man, they can really act. Because, from my eye, I wouldn't know how to tell what a talented actor is or what makes a talented actor, I guess, because I'm probably just watching talented actors because they're the ones that make the main screen or in all the popular movies and on the TV shows.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. The very first thing that I did professionally acting wise was a musical off Broadway. And the actor and the musician who stars in that show, his name is Joshua Henry. He's a multiple Tony nominee. He's just he puts so much effort and vigor into everything he does. And I would say that is the person who taught me, or that's the person I saw who I was man, that's what it takes. Mm-hmm. It takes that kind of dedication, because listen, acting, just like music, is a very subjective thing. Someone can, if I'm auditioning against you and Pablo for this part, right? The point is to do the role, to embody the character in a way that feels natural, to each of us, but we're also getting across something deeper about the character that we might not even relate to. And it's the ability to do that so that it doesn't look like you're acting, right? That's really what it is. And it's funny the amount of work that takes.
So would you say I've always heard of actors they're just really embracing the character. So do you ever take hey, you got a role coming up and you really embrace it? Do you have a hard time separating once you're off camera to real life, you find yourself trying to, really embody that off stage, and you're just doing stuff you normally wouldn't do because you're trying to act like the character and in public and be better?
No. That kind of stuff is wild, man. And there are people that do that, and it's I guess the most recent thing is in succession, like Jeremy Strong does this kind of, apparently, I don't know Jeremy, but like does this, has this process that verges on like something that a lot of people miscall method acting, which is just like you're just in it all the time. I don't think that like that is personally, and like what do I know? I'm whatever, but like personally, I just don't think that that's necessary if you're preparing well enough. But I will say, like, again, I was just shooting a show in Vancouver for 7 months, and it's a really heavy show. Like it's really heavy. It'll be out next year. And it's about, this really kind of gruesome crime. And when my wife would come to visit in Vancouver, I was kind of like, all right, you can't come visit this week or this week or that week, because I'm like, I know what scenes we're shooting that week. And like, I need, if I'm shooting that scene on Thursday, say, I need Wednesday to just kind of like prepare, lock in. Thursday, I'm on set for 13 hours. And then if it's a scene that is so heavy and so kind of like emotionally taxing, like it's not that I'm taking that with me when I leave, but I still need that day after to just kind of decompress, because you put so much energy into that.
I listen, I understand that fully, because a lot of times when I was preparing, or there's a big game, like, what it takes to perform well in the way that you want to perform. So you got to tell people, listen, after the game, I'm going to be completely wiped. Before I want to prepare, I'm not, I don't feel like going out and stuff like that, because it's just going to take a little bit out of the tank, what you need. So I get what you're saying. I know we're kind of all over the place, but American Idol, when you're on American Idol, that was a huge deal, because it just seemed like, I was right after, I think I might have graduated, but that was a big deal because, everyone at UNC was watching. We knew your connection. Could you talk about that? And that, like, I feel like that's where you kind of just blew up, to say on the national scene.
You know what? I mean, look, we Pablo and I go very, very far back, and we were in the class together. And so when we graduated in 2008, like I was starting actually grad school at Carolina. And I, thanks to Pablo and some of our other buddies who kind of encouraged me, like, hey, you should just go, like whatever, just go try out. Like who cares? Like, it's probably not going to happen. But, and it was just one of those processes, man, where going from Carolina and the Clefs, which, in 2008, when we graduated, was kind of like, I mean, you were at our concerts and everything, right? Like, selling at Memorial Hall, and there's like 1,500 people like there to see you. It was a big deal, and it's hard to say with a kind of a straight face now, but it was a big deal. And so going from that into Idol felt very natural, because I felt like I was coming off of at least the height of what I could have achieved in music at Carolina. Now, once that process got more and more, going, like once the snowball kept rolling down the hill, it's like, wow, like I wasn't prepared for all that. I mean, that's a global kind of, recognition that I was not prepared for. I mentioned those kids earlier that I was working with, and it's like, man, they know what they're doing. Like, they're in this industry. I didn't feel like I was in the industry at that time. I felt like I was just kind of like whatever stuck to the wall. And like, if they just kept going another day, then I would just keep going another day. I didn't really know what I was doing. So it was jarring, man. It was jarring for sure.
Yeah, that was really cool to watch. I think everyone at UNC, we were real happy for you. But that was a big deal. That was really cool. But I know you keep up. Do what?
Yeah. Oh, I was just about to say, like, when I was on Idol, and I think we had to go record something, and it was the night of the 2009 championship game. And that's when I like my priorities were like, I can't do that. I need to go sit in front of the TV. Like that's what I need to do. Like, I don't really care about what I'm doing right now. I need to go watch us.
You know, it's crazy to think about too. When we went out, Anoop, to visit you on Idol, we went to Santa Barbara just at a place to chill before we went back to see you in Beverly Hills. And it was the selection night for the tournament. And so like it was me and I think Rick Davis and Chris Melly. And we were sitting there, you know, fully in the American Idol world, just getting ready to go see you. But we were like, no, we need to watch that. And Tyler, y'all got the overall #1 in that tournament placement. And then we, you know, after we took care of that, we went back and.
Yeah. So like all it is to say, as cool as it was for Carolina that I was on Idol, it's like they were priorities, you know?
Well, it's funny because after we won it, I remember coming back. After we won it, we went out for like 2 weeks straight. And then I was like, how do you get my life together? I remember we used to run into you going out. So that was, and that was really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We used to have some viewing parties there on Franklin Street. We had Players and He's Not, a couple other places, like the whole place there just to watch episodes of American Idol, which is hilarious.
You know, it's really sad that the students now, they'll never get to experience Players.
It truly is.
So, Anoop, was that your favorite spot? I know you probably didn't start out at Players unless you were an absolute savage. You just went to Players at like 10 p.m., but no one made it to Players till about 11:30.
There were, I think we probably went to Players earlier the younger we were.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? So, and then because I can remember being like somewhere like getting ready to go, and then we would have this thing. In a couple of our friends lived in Stacy dorm, and so we'd be pre-gaming at Stacy. And then we would all sprint to Players. So get like through the quad. We would just sprint there. And that seems like maybe that was the only place we could go. So I feel like maybe that was early on in our careers. Yeah.
Oh man. I remember I used to, my go-to was La Res. So I would start at La Res. And get a good foundation going, and then I get a little courage. I'm like, we're going to Players immediately, and this would be like midnight. And it seemed like everyone just. If they had videos of us in Players back in the day, I would pay significant money to get some videos of us seeing how bad we were at dancing and what we were doing in Players. That was so great. Man.
I always loved going to or being at La Res when y'all were there too, and maybe it wasn't just when y'all were there, but I've talked to Marcus about this a lot because I would like ending like when the lights come up and they started playing World's Greatest, which I know R. Kelly song we can't play it anymore, and that's great. We shouldn't play it anymore. But at the time, man, it was just like the lights would come up and just everyone was just standing on tables screaming the World's Greatest. That it's like a core memory for me.
Oh man, and you know exactly, like everyone had their section in La Res, that corner bar.
Yeah,
MG used to hold it down better than anybody.
Yeah,
and it always I think they should have a statue of Marcus right in La Res right in that spot. But that was
right in that exactly.
That was great. But you are a big college basketball fan, right?
Yeah. Oh, huge.
So what do you think about the landscape right now? Because there's a lot going on. Pablo said you're pretty passionate about this. The NIL and everyone, heading different places, the transfer portal. I mean, it is an absolute circus right now. I would love to get your opinion on what you think. We got a lot of college basketball fans listening to us.
You know what? It's such a hard thing to say. And the reason it's hard is because I think like we're now at the age now where I feel like we're talking about kids, like we're talking about kids, and it's really hard to judge anything that a kid, and in this case, his family, decide they want to or need to do, you know. Having said that, I'm also, I mean, I'm also, you know, I bleed Carolina. I mean, I grew up in Chapel Hill. Like it's really close to my heart. So when something like what has happened the last 2 years, right? First losing Gigi and now Wilshire, two, you know, for reasons that are seemingly not about basketball and not about the place.
Yeah.
It feels like I can't help but feel a little insulted just because of how much Carolina basketball means to me.
Yeah.
Right. Because you look at both of those. I mean, Gigi wanted to reclassify, whatever, you know, did that whole thing. Simeon, obviously, Elliott comes in, and I think it's pretty obvious, like, felt like he was going to be, he wasn't going to be starting, which is probably true, and decided to go to St. John's. So you can't fault those people for doing that, but it does kind of feel like, well, wait, that doesn't have anything to do with Carolina.
Yeah.
Like that has to do with you. And something that I think is pretty obvious to any adult who has had these points in their lives, which are, you know, the ebbs and flows and the hardship, the peaks and valleys, is that you don't really know.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't know what's going to happen to you. Just because you're coming off the bench behind Elliott Cadeau, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get to the league. It doesn't mean that you're not going to average 15 a game necessarily. Like if there's anything we've learned from the way that these rosters have been constructed, I mean, even going back to Roy's last couple of years, right? It's just like whoever can play, get on the court and play.
Yeah.
And so that's the part that confuses me. It's saying like, well, yeah, we both played a point, like we're both, you know, ball handlers. It's like, that doesn't really mean anything in this era of certainly not the NBA. And I think what Hubert is doing and bringing more of that pro style offense, you know, the positionless basketball to Carolina, it's like, you know, like, yeah. So it upsets me a little bit, but
I mean, it's, you know, as Carolina fans, I will say there's got to be a value on, for me, is like, there's a value on UNC, like going to such a good school that has great connections, that has great alumni and a historical traditional basketball program. And I just think it devalues that a little bit. And also there's a big factor in the restructuring of college basketball, especially the landscape, is I don't think kids put enough value on coaching. And I think coaching is super important, not just for basketball, but for also developing character in a young person. You know, it's your first time away from home as a young kid. And so a lot of these great coaches, like I'll even put Coach K, Coach Williams, you know, Bill Self, and all these guys. I mean, there's something to be said for playing for a great coach that will teach you discipline and how to, you know, work as a team. There's a lot of value in that. And it seems like these kids are just jumping on money. But if you look back at it, I mean, I don't think there's a price tag you can put on going to a prestigious program like UNC, your friendships, or playing for a great coach. And then you look back on it, and now you see kids playing, oh, they started at this school. Now this is like their third school. And I'm just like, man, they feel like no loyalty to any alumni. It just, like, I hate that feeling. So I'm with you on that. It's just changing. It seems like everyone's, you know, switching schools. I just hate the unpredictability of it, and I hate the transfer portal. I don't know if you feel that way about the transfer. I think it's an absolute joke.
Yeah. I mean, I you know, it's like, I understand from like a COVID standpoint, right? Like if you had guys that were like, okay, we lost 2 years of school, like, all right, you have more eligibility, and so open up the transfer portal to more people. But like this, I mean, it's free agency now.
Yeah, 100%.
And if there's anything that we know is that, like, other programs would give their left foot to poach one of our players. Like it's just like other programs are going to prey on us. Always. Like it's just, that's what's going to happen. And I agree with you. I hate the transfer portal, or at least, you know, say you can transfer once or twice. And I don't know, when it turns into free agency like this, and you're right, when you have no allegiance to any program or any coach, it's the same thing as like if, for people that are in the workforce now, it's like, what does your resume look like? It's like, I spent 2 months here, and then I spent 3 months here, and then I spent 2 months here, and then I spent 1 month here. It's like, what? I'm curious about what that would say to an NBA GM. I'm curious what that would say to any kind of GM or team, overseas. Is like, well, do we think we can count on this guy, right? And talent aside, because I think at that level everyone's got talent, right? It's about situation, it's about preparation, it's about like how much you're going to make of this opportunity that you have. And I think, transfer portal combined with, NIL, and I'm firmly in favor of guys getting paid for firmly in favor of that. But it just seems like if that's the motivation, it kind of seems like people are thinking about the effects that basketball can have on their lives as opposed to thinking about basketball.
Yeah. One thing that I loved when we had Bomani on the show, he talked about how a lot of players don't see the disservice of moving around, whereas if you stayed in a program, even if you weren't in the starting five, how you become such a beloved member of the community, and then it actually helps you out in your career moving forward. There are people who don't end up playing basketball and can get so much more from it. But also as a fan, especially a Carolina fan, and one of the things that I loved to see at Duke was when they were getting the one and dones, because I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to have to think about this kid next year. It's great. But one of the things you love as a Carolina fan is watching the kids develop and become these players, right? We got to see Joel Berry become that guy, and we got to see Marcus Page become that guy, and we got to see Luke May become this guy who, walked on the team and all of a sudden is killing Kentucky at a buzzer. Like, it's you get to see them, and you feel like ownership over them over the 4 years, and the way the transfer portal is happening, you don't get as much of that, and I think it's a real shame.
But you know what, Pops? I also see the opposite side of that, which is like we shouldn't, like, the fact that we're saying, okay, we feel ownership over these guys is really beside the point, right? Like they got to do, and I think like that's why kind of putting it in terms of it being a disservice to them to be moving around. Like, I think that's kind of an underexplored part of this, because how many stories have we heard of like, oh yeah, this GM got on the horn with Roy or whoever, and Roy was like, yeah, this is it. You want to draft this guy. You want this guy to be a part of your team. I mean, there are tens of stories about that over the 100 or so players that Roy had at Carolina, right? Probably more. I'm just making that number up, but like it's just like that has to be such a foundational part of your journey and your identity in the league. And you see it still. I mean, you see that come right. I watch a ton of NBA. I probably watch more NBA than I do college ball now, but you still see it. I mean, so yeah, it's a shame. But I also think that there is, you can't be mad at them at a
I understand
point.
that, and I understand. I'm in favor of kids getting paid. I think they should. I think it's been too long, actually, for them to start getting paid for what they do. Legally, they couldn't hold out any longer. But also, I think that it's making kids soft, because I don't think they get the coaching that they got years ago, because coaches are afraid to push the players as much as they used to, because they don't want them to enter the transfer portal or upset their feelings and just go. And I always think, could you imagine Bobby Knight in the NIL era, like with the transfer portal, like a coach like him? I mean, just the way he coaches, kind of in your face. I've always wondered how he had handled this era of basketball. I think he's a great coach too. Has done a lot of good things, but it's hard to coach like that now. And I value that.
I imagine, Hubert, you're thinking about, am I going to play this guy even if he's potentially being a detriment to the team, or else he's going to run away? I mean, like, it's exactly what you're saying. I can imagine that's so difficult to deal with now.
Do you think there's an element though of like, to me, what it feels like a lot of times is that guys want to skip steps.
Yeah.
And so like sometimes when we talk about like, oh, well, I don't know what I'm even trying to say. Like, is one of those steps like belonging somewhere? Is one of those steps fighting for playing time? Because you're gonna have to do that no matter where you end up, right? You're gonna have to fight for playing time. There are very few. I mean, even if you're a lottery pick, you might start, but if you don't play well for a year and a half, 2 years, they're gonna unload your contract super quick. So it's like you're always fighting, right? So I feel like that is the step. And that is the part of it that is a disservice. They're doing a disservice to themselves in a way. Is like, start fighting now. Like, you need to know what that feels like to be like showing up.
Yeah, and I've talked about this, Anoop. I think what I've said that another problem I have with this is I think kids are looking for excuses instead of looking in the mirror and say, hey, I need to improve this. This is what I need to work on. And I think the transfer portal has made it to where these kids will, have it, well, man, this guy's not going to play me. I got to go somewhere else. Instead of being like, hey, I've got to do this better. I've got to improve on this. And then they take that same attitude to a different program and they're not getting the minutes. And then it's like, oh, it's not them, it's me. So, when kids didn't transfer like this, I feel like they're a little more motivated to work on their game instead of just go somewhere else. That's another excuse, but we'll see what happens with it. I mean, it's all interesting. I think it will smooth out and get better. But the one question I have is, we always ask, and this is Sleep Dog's question, who's your top 5 Carolina players all time? We ask everyone who comes on this show. You don't have to put me in there if I'm not in there. I'm not going to hold it against you. So go ahead. Let's hear your list.
All right. You're on there.
That was the right answer.
Yeah. So, all right, we got one position. Man, as a guy that grew up in Chapel Hill in the 90s, like, I got to put Ed Cota on that list. I got to put Vince on that list.
Love it.
I mean, it feels like it might be a lot of 90s guys. You know what? I got to put Marcus Page on that list. I realize I'm doubling up on the point guards, but So let's see, who do I have? Marcus Page, Ed Cota, Tyler, Vince, Anton.
Wow, no Jordan.
Or
I am doing this as like my experience with Carolina basketball, right? Like my parents saw Mike play live. Like I didn't, like I'm proud of it. Like, of course, like he's all time, right? But like, as far as my experience, like the things that made me fall in love with Carolina basketball, like made me, like cry, made me sweat, made me like really invested. It was those 90s teams. And then like, even when I was in college, obviously, like your teams, Tyler, and the teams before that, like, I don't know. I feel like I was part of those teams. So that's what I'm basing this on. I'm not saying James and Michael.
Yeah. It's not like you put players that had an impact because you were watching them. I feel that. And one of the players, Marcus Page, just joined the team, which we're going to have him on the podcast soon. But I'm really excited that he's coming back to the program. I think the kids are going to listen to him. I think it's going to be good for us. But he almost hit one of the biggest shots in Carolina history in the Final Four.
Right, yeah. But oh my gosh, my wife and I had just started dating. Maybe we've been dating for a year or so, and I'll give her shit to this day because I was like, you know what, I'm gonna watch the final game at your apartment, at her apartment. This is a big part of Carolina basketball, a big part of my life. I want to bring you in on this. And she committed a cardinal sin. As Pablo knows, I'm very, very superstitious. And Marcus hit that shot. And she just gets up and goes to the kitchen like there's something that she really needs to do. And then Chris Jenkins comes down, and I was like, "Did you just get up in the middle of this happening? You got up, and then that happened." So I still
sort of blame her.
It's still very raw.
God, she is never getting up during a game again. I guarantee.
She's an Auburn fan, and so when they they got demolished us a couple years ago.
Oh man.
Well, and then they got right.
Marcus Page, man. I just feel like a lot of Carolina fans saw him grow, and he never got a national championship, but he is one of the most beloved players in program history. So a lot of people can relate with that one. But
for sure, that top 5 is like the all-heart top 5, which is fantastic.
Totally.
Yeah. Anoop, thank you so much for being on here, man. I really appreciate you spending the time here. This has been great.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. Best of luck with acting. We'll be following you, and we'll be looking for all the shows and keeping up with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
Big Hawk, you got anything else?
Stay safe.
Stay safe.